Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Hi, everybody. Joe Trippi here, Democratic strategist and host of That Trippi Show. And my new show, On the Ground with Joe Trippi, will be doing new episodes of that in the last part of May. With me is the other Joe, celebrated journalist Joe Klein. Joe's been covering politics a hell of a long time, and I'm sure I've been running them just about as long. And anyway, Joe, I'll turn it over to you to get us started.
Well, I think we can start this week with the quote of the week from the defeated incumbent senator of Louisiana, who was defeated because Donald Trump didn't want him to stay in office.
To set the record straight, our country is not about one individual. It is about the welfare of all Americans, and it is about our Constitution. And it is the welfare of my people and my state and my country and our Constitution to which I am loyal. And if someone doesn't understand that and attempts to control others through using the levers of power, they're about serving themselves. They're not about serving us. And that person is not qualified to be a leader.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, he could have mentioned his name.
Didn't have to, I don't think.
Well, no, I understand what you're saying, Joe, but it's still the senatorial carefulness of colleagues and not
it's
being
elegance, Joe.
Yeah. Well, that's what
we're both peasants and
Yeah.
and not elegant people, but it's called elegance, and I respect it when I see it.
Well, it may be called elegance, but the crook in chief deserves to be called out as Donald Trump, and I would wish the senator would have said that on his way out the door. Although I don't think
he's not out the door yet. He's going to vote against Trump for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, my sense of this
actually, what he should do, he should run a write-in campaign.
He should
write a write-in campaign to fuck Donald Trump.
Well, listen,
but I know that's not. I mean, I know that's not in the senatorial, but that's what I would urge him to do. Anyway.
Well, we're both the descendants of street Pauls, and you're a street Paul, and what my headline off of last night would be. Trump can't lose by winning. Can lose by winning. I think that his victories last night show that the Republican Party is curling up into a tiny little ball, into a cult, and I think Jonestown is coming.
Well, look, when you look at the results like 55-45, it's only 55 that did what Trump said in the Republican Party. I mean, and that's not just with Cornyn, it's with, with Cassidy. I mean, it's with Massey in Kentucky. You basically have roughly a big difference from, 95% who would, whatever he said, let's go. It's down. It's clearly split. And the problem with that is, my guess is some of those people in Kentucky and Texas, and Louisiana, are not going to vote, or I'm not sure they'll switch parties or anything, but I think that they're going to be less than enthusiastic to go out and vote. I'm talking about the Massey and the Cassidy people, and now the Cornyn people, evidently, since the president has gone out and endorsed Paxton in Texas. So we're going to see more of this, I'm assuming. in later in the month when we go to the Texas primaries.
Well, I think that I could make the argument that this has been the worst week of many bad weeks in the Trump presidency. He internationally, he seemed very much the lesser leader in his in a summit with Xi Jinping last week.
Mm-hmm.
He comes home and for about 15 minutes threatens the Iranians with more war, and then backs off of that and says there are developments in the talks. There aren't developments in the talks. The Iranians don't have to change their position at all. The war is in a stalemate. Stalemate doesn't favor the United States. And then he endorses Paxton over Cornyn.
Yeah.
I mean, that is self-aggrandizing insanity. I mean, I can't see it. And inflation is going up. The high gas prices for as far as the eye can see.
And they're going up. They're continue to go up. they're not going down.
I just, the results from last night are entirely predictable when you realize that the Republican Party has split in half, with about 60% of it, 70% of it going to Donald Trump. But that's 60% of 35%, right?
Yeah.
And so that is, one of the other thoughts that I've had this week. I know a fair number of reasonable Republicans. I've had them in my family. They've been friends of mine. I admit that. But I think that the Democrats, and you can speak to this probably a lot more passionately than I will. I think that when you look at the gerrymandering, especially the racial gerrymandering that's happening in the South, you're going to get strong majorities of Black voters, Democrats, and with a telltale sliver of Republicans that are going to turn, what the Republicans think is positive gerrymandering into something far more neutral.
Well, I don't think it'll be neutral. I really think this is all going to backfire, at least from what I'm seeing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, the energy in the Black community, it's something, look, it's kind of fascinating how you look at the erosion from first reneging on the promise to expose Epstein files, which started to create some erosion with independents and with some MAGA folks started to, to question what was going on. You also had the mass deportations, the killing of citizens in Minneapolis that drove Latinos away and a lot of people away, but Latinos in particular, are nowhere where they were in 2024. And then, no, let's make sure every Black male that might have moved to him in 2024, let's what could we do to inflame that and to push them away and to energize that community as well, not to mention women, et cetera. So no, I just see, in Alabama last night, I think we saw something like 115% increase in Democratic turnout in the primary, 115% increase. And I think Republicans turnout decreased about 25%. So you're seeing in this, we can't do apples and apples yet because they're not in a general election, which we'll see in November. But in Alabama, the turnout among Democrats was twice what it was the last time around for a governor's race, and the Republican turnout was 25% lower. That's not. I mean, I think Alabama. I'm working for Doug Jones there. Had a great night last night. A lot of work to do, but I think Alabama is coming into play where Trump's approval is now underwater, even in Alabama. So with that energy, it's what created that 116%, that doubling of the turnout. And look, in the Democratic primary in Alabama, that the majority of the turnout is Black.
Sure.
And so, no, that's what I'm saying. I think that this is not going to work out well for them. And I think in Florida and other places, we're seeing signs that as they draw the lines and sort of like, sort of spread out the vote a little bit, it makes some other districts, they grab a few, but they're making some of their other districts more competitive. So no, I think, and of course you can't do that in statewide. You can't draw Blacks out of the equation. So I think statewide, places like Ohio with Sherrod Brown, we'll see. But no, I don't buy this at all, that it's going to be. Let's look at Texas just for 1 second. They redrew 5 lines based on where they thought independents and Blacks were in 2020 and Hispanics, in 2024. Right. Neither of those groups are anywhere near where they were in 2024. And now some really nonpartisan demographers looking at those 5 districts are saying that 3 of them are going to be electing Democrats. And so they've created 5. I know every time you see CNN or anybody talk about all the redistricting, they've got 5. They count the 5 as Republican seats, and then they count California, et cetera. It's not going to happen that way.
By the way, the demographers you just mentioned, if you guys are out there, we'd love to have you on Two Joes sometime in the next month.
Yeah, well, I'm going to try to do. We should try to do that probably right after the
Texas primary.
Texas primary when it'll be. Yeah, it'll be coming up soon here. So we've been talking about that. Well, I'll try to get Kobe or somebody hunting them down, but I think that makes sense.
I want to talk about a different ethnic group, which will lead into your stat of the week. I want to talk about Jews. This is a rough time for Jews in the United States. And why don't you go with your stat of the week, and we can talk about where all that money came from.
There it is. Yeah. $34 million. That's the most ever spent in history in a congressional race. And it was all spent in the Republican primary against, it would be in the fight between Massey and Trump. 34 million. By the way, that's 34 million. Thank you all, because that's 34 million that won't be spent against the Democrats in Kentucky or somewhere else, hopefully.
As a registered Jew, I non-practicing but ethnically very Jewish. I have to call out the fact that AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, is involved in 348 congressional races this year, all of them on the side of Netanyahu supporting candidates. And Joe, you know this, but maybe our listeners don't. I went to Israel for at least once a year for over 30 years to cover wars, elections, whatever they had. Usually it was elections. And I spent an equal amount of time in the Palestinian territories. And I think that this election, not just for Republicans, but also especially for the Democratic Party, is going to be a telling moment for American Jews. And the question is whether they side with AIPAC and Netanyahu or whether they don't. Now, I know that there has been a large, 34%, more than 34% of, that was just your stat, it was 34 million.
Right.
Yeah. I know that AIPAC has had the support of a lot of Jews in the past, But I think that the number is now below 50%, and certainly it is in the Democratic Party, and that can lead to, I think, dangerous circumstances for American Jews.
Well, I mean, I've been to Israel several times as well, and actually was there when Sharon turned Gaza over to the Palestinians and removed all the settlements. And I was there in Gaza.
I was in the settlements.
I was in the settlements. I was there when they moved the bulldozers in to take the settlements out there. So we were probably standing within a mile of each other and didn't know it. You as a journalist and me as a political operative.
They don't have good pubs in Gaza.
No.
So but probably run into each other.
But I know it's light years from that time. I mean, you look at where, there's in 1986 or 87, somewhere around there, before the 1988 presidential primary, I was over there in Israel meeting with, young Democratic or young, actually American political leaders meeting with young Israeli leaders or, rising stars. And one of them was Bibi Netanyahu. And we're talking, I was in my, I was like in my 20s. And I had a one-on-one with him where we were just talking. And I'll never forget this, because at some point in that conversation, which I'm sure he'll deny now, he said that he thought there was a final solution. He used the words. He used the phrase "final solution," which made the hair on the back of my neck, flare up. And then and when I asked what was it, it was that we will bulldoze them into the Jordan. That is the final. And this is literally 1986, 1987. So that is who he is. That's where he's always been. That's what he's doing it now. I mean, that's what this was all about. And I am a huge supporter of Israel's existence and a massive opponent of Bibi Netanyahu and what he's doing right now. I have a lot of friends in J Street, AIPAC, all of it, all that, and I understand how cross-pressured that community has to be right now.
AIPAC doesn't like me very much. They once tried to ban me from one of their conventions.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I understand. I understand the position that all the American Jewish community is in as individuals, but I'm not. Put your money in taking on Trump. Not. I don't care what. Whose side who's on. It's we are literally. I think between Bibi and Trump, there's no good going on between the two of them, and I would urge people to not put their money there.
Let me tell you a story. I've also known Bibi for a long time, and I would interview him almost he always had time for me, even though he knew I would rip him up in American press and on TV. The last conversation I had with him, the latest one, was about 10 years ago. And I go in and he says, "Joe, I have it on the very best authority that as soon as the Iranians, as soon as the mullahs get the bomb, they're going to launch on Israel."
Of course.
And I started to laugh. And he said, "What's so funny?" And I said, "Because I've just been to Iran, and I know those folks know that if they ever launched on you, you would vaporize Tehran 10 minutes later." So the next day I had, when he said the very best authority, he was probably thinking that he was referring to Mossad. The next day I had lunch with a Mossad source, and I told him the story, and he started to laugh. And I said, "What's so funny?" And he says, oh, Bibi tells that to all the Americans, especially the evangelicals.
Yeah.
But Bibi told that to Trump. And that is why we are in this war, because Trump, schmuck. I mean, really, at the end of the day, the guy really isn't very smart, and he's very gullible. If you tell him anything that he wants to hear, he believes it. But
yeah, absolutely.
He believed Netanyahu that, this they were 2 weeks away from a nuclear bomb. That's nonsense. And you hear,
well, they've been 2 weeks with Bibi. They've been 2 weeks away for 10 years. Every 2 weeks they've been away. They've been 2 weeks away from.
Well, his is a 2 weeks
for
presidency.
10 years, at least 10 years, probably longer than 10 years.
His is a 2 weeks presidency. In 2 weeks, we're going to take out.
But we obliterated their nuclear. We obliterated. It's all dust and buried somewhere. It's like, but we got to go get it now. So the whole thing is ridiculous.
The question is, as always, when, if ever, do the chickens come home to roost? And I think that the roosting is when he gets down to he's down to 34% in one of the big polls. He's down to a cult. But before we go, I think we have at least 10 minutes on my old friend, Barney Frank, who passed away last night.
Yeah, please.
Barney was one of the few politicians who was able to say to me, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And I would laugh because my response would be, you don't either. But I knew Barney back when he was an aide to Kevin White. And one of the first things, it was during busing, and there were these two local politicians, Albert Dapper O'Neill and Louise Day Hicks. And one of the first things Barney ever said to me was, first time I ever heard of a symbiotic relationship between two parasites.
Yeah.
And I got to say, one other story I'll tell is that I was in the underground press then, and I was in an upstart underground press called the Real Paper. We had split off from another underground paper, and Barney showed up in our basement, appropriately, office with a folded up Boston Globe into which he had put his savings account, which was $300.
Jeez.
We paid him back pretty quickly, but
that is great, one of the best ever in the House, leaders that we had out there.
But I also his most recent message to the Democrats,
is really important for people because of how progressive he was and who he was. I think it's really important that that people hear what he said and listen to it and think about it, because I think it does. Look, I was with Ted Kennedy in '80 against Carter. I've been one of those progressive, storming the castle and know what that got us: 8 years of Reagan and 4 years of George Herbert Walker Bush. I learned that lesson when I was in my early 20s, before I ended up going to Israel and meeting Bibi Netanyahu. But it's a lesson that I think the left of the party needs to unfortunately, each generation of the left unwittingly seems to want to learn that firsthand instead of learning it from people like Barney and me.
What Joe's talking about is the fact that Barney, his final message is going to appear in September in a book in which he really launches against the left and says that they have come to believe in things that the American people don't believe in. And that was reinforced. I don't know if you saw Tom Etzel's column in the New York Times this week, but there's a Pew study, and the Pew studies are usually very, very rigorous, that shows that Democrats can romp in 2026 and maybe 2028 if they move to the center, especially on cultural issues, which is something
Right.
you might have heard from me before, but I think it's absolutely
well, and it's true the other way too. Republicans can win broader the tent if they move to the left on some of those same cultural issues, some of those same issues the other way, and find the middle. But I would let Bernie's words stand. He did do a bunch of really incredible interviews, I think with Jake Tapper and some others in the closing, before, in the last days of his life, that I think are pretty important if people can look at them. We'll try to dig up when the book comes out. We'll make sure that we put that in the show notes, and then we let people know. My only look, Barney and I, the biggest memory I have of him is a weird story, because I had run the main straw vote for Vice President Mondale in 1983, and when we won it, Mondale decided that the way to repay me, the big promotion would be, let's send Trippi to run the state of Massachusetts. And so I got to, that's my first state. I got to run the state of Massachusetts for about 3 or 4 weeks. One day I'm in Governor Mike Dukakis's office with Mike Dukakis and Barney Frank. And Barney is with Gary Hart. And of course, I'm running the state for Mondale, and Dukakis is trying to have a conversation with Barney about, hey, look, maybe you should think about this and join us, et cetera. And in the middle of it, the phone rings, and and the receptionist tells the governor that it's the vice president on the phone. He needs to talk to you. So Dukakis goes into into his side office and takes the call. He comes out. He looks out the window and he says, gosh, it's snowing outside. And me and Barney are looking at each other like, yeah, it's snowing. And he goes, gosh, it's really, really cold here. And I'm like, yeah, we're both looking. Barney's looking at me. Yeah, it's cold out there. And then the governor says, gosh, it's colder in Iowa. I'd really hate to be going there. And he goes, Joe, the vice president is still on the phone waiting for you in the other room. He wants to tell you something, which was to tell me that I was no longer running the state of Massachusetts, but I was now being sent to go run Iowa. And Barney was sitting there, and he just looked at me and said, don't worry, I won't tell the Hart campaign. Like, like that. It's just go. They'll find out on their own. Don't worry. Then I'm going to run out of here and make the phone call and say, get ready, because they're moving, the entire Maine unit into Iowa. But he was like, I mean, just you could have a big difference. He could be on the other side of you, but there was a respect, a civility, an intellect, a genius.
Only if he thought you were smart. If he thought you were dumb, he had no time.
He'd roll over you. Yeah, that's true too.
You couldn't have a conversation with Barney without.
Or maybe he thought I was dumb, so he's going to be nice to me. I don't know. It worked out.
No, he probably wanted to be with Hart, actually. But, wanted you to be with Hart.
Yeah. Well, I ended up being with Hart in '87, much to my chagrin. Another great
slow Joe. But I want to tell one more Barney story, because you can't talk about Barney without acknowledging that he was the first member of Congress to come out as gay. And when that happened, a congressman, Republican from Texas, called him Barney Fag. And then I forget which congressman it was, but in fact, he probably should go nameless. But he then retracted it, and he said, oh, I just got the words mixed up. I meant to call him Congressman Frank, not Congressman Fag. And Barney responded by saying, I talked to the ultimate expert on this subject, my mother, Elsie, who has been Elsie Frank for 59 years now. And she told me that she had never been called Elsie Fag.
No, he had such humor. That was the other thing about him. But anyway, yeah, it's we're a giant that we've lost, and I'm really going to miss him. I know you will too.
Well, I certainly will miss him personally, and I have always had the greatest respect for politicians who were willing to tell me that I was full of shit. And
he didn't mix words when he told you were full of shit. That's no matter who you were or what you were saying. So, Joe, anything else in the closing moments here? Since I think we're running out of time, but just wanted to.
Yeah, no, I think we should be celebrating the worst week of the Trump presidency so far, except for the aspects of it that affect America's security overseas.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us for another episode of Two Joes. Please leave us a like, comment, or review, and please share this episode with a friend you only mostly agree with. And if someone you want to even learn even more from us or see more from us, the Two Joes, please check out Joe Klein's Substack, Sanity Clause, Joseph Klein, and my other podcast, The Trippi Show, and On the Ground with Joe Trippi. We'll see you next week. Thanks all. Have a good, like I said, we'll see you next week, and have a real, we got to keep fighting out there, folks. It's a really important one. So thanks for being with us.
Okay.
Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.